See, one of the reasons that I believe in God is because I think through what is more reasonable. To believe that this rational mind comes from the non-rational, the irrational, or is it more reasonable to believe that my rational mind comes from an incredibly intelligent mind? And so that's a no-brainer for me. I see no evidence that the rational comes from the non-rational or the irrational. I see tons of evidence that the rational comes from the rational. So a person who's an atheist is saying, I believe in a miracle. And the miracle that I believe in is the rational comes from the non-rational. The only problem is the atheist doesn't have a miracle worker to pull that miracle off. See, I as a theist, as someone who believes in a rational God, am saying, you know why you and I have rational minds? Because there's a rational creator who creates us and gives us the ability to think rationally. And that is why it's appropriate for me to thank God for the rational mind that He's given me. Does that make any sense?
No, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. What if I believe that I am rational because I've seen other people be irrational? Like learning from somebody's mistakes, kind of thing.
You bet. Great point. You can at times learn from other people's mistakes. You know, for me, that's a fascinating point you raise. For me, there are three ways I can learn. I can learn by thinking on my own, creatively. Secondly, I can learn from my mistakes. And thirdly, I can learn from your mistakes.
Right.
Now, learning from my mistakes is very painful.
Yeah.
Right? And yes, I can learn from watching you make your mistakes. But what's best is if I can really get my brain into gear and think creatively, think rationally, and learn that way. But you're absolutely right. I learn from observing you make mistakes, and then to be honest with you, the most difficult way for me to learn is by learning from mistakes that I make.
Yeah.
But you see, that doesn't change the fact that the rational mind that you and I have is such an amazingly intricate computer, if you will. It demands an intelligent mind. Cape Canaveral, the first moonshot was being made. And two scientists who worked for NASA, one was a believer in God and the other was an atheist or agnostic, stood beside each other. And they're watching this spaceship take off from Cape Canaveral, Cape Kennedy, to go to the moon. And the believer turns to the unbeliever and says, isn't it amazing the way this rocket ship by accident is going to get to the moon? And the agnostic scientist says, what do you mean by accident? We have invested millions of man-hours into putting this rocket together. And the believing scientist turns to the unbelieving scientist and says, really? Well, then how much more unlikely is it that this incredible universe that you and I could never put together, regardless of how many millions of man-hours we put into it, is a result of chance? See, order and design, especially complex order and design, like a rocket ship, demands an intelligent mind. That's the only reason it made it from Cape Canaveral to the moon. Well, the universe is far more complex than a rocket ship. If I demand that the only reason the rocket ship makes it to the moon is because of all the intelligent design, but then I turn around and say, but this rational mind and this universe is just the result of chance, it's pretty implausible, isn't it?